thank our sponsor for this evening's program, Quabbin Valley Healthcare. And I'd like to introduce to you Michelle Morin. She is the Director of Marketing and New Business Development for Quabbin Valley Healthcare. She's going to tell you a bit about their organization. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you, Doug, and thank you, Maureen, for the opportunity. Quabbin Valley Healthcare is honored to be a sponsor of this program. As Doug mentioned, my name is Michelle. I am Marketing and New Business Development at Quabbin Valley Healthcare. I am also the facilitator of the Senior Care Collaborative Networking Group of North Central Massachusetts and a co-facilitator of the Worcester Elder Care Networking Group. For those of you that aren't familiar with Quabbin Valley, it's understandable. We are located off of Route 2 in a quaint New England town in North Central Massachusetts. Don't let our geographic location fool you. We service the Bay State Franklin Hospital, Athol Hospital, Haywood Hospital, all the Worcester hospitals, and of course, Boston hospitals. We are a subacute care skilled nursing facility. Our specialties are on the screen. Of most importance is we do IV therapy, we do trachs, complex medical care. We do have an excellent wound care program under the direction of Dr. Wang. We have in-room high flow oxygen. We have one of the area's only negative pressure rooms. We're currently onboarding a new pulmonologist for our respiratory program. Our medical director is Dr. Tricia Vorderstroff. If you know her, she's a hospitalist at Haywood Hospital with privileges all over. And we also are a true 24-hour, 7-day-a-week admitting facility with coverage on the weekends. And we also offer one of the area's only pre-booking program. We call it Bridging the Gap. It helps to transition people from hospital to post-acute care by pre-booking their room in advance. And that would be for your post-op patient, your stroke or cardiac recovery patient. Again, I want to thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to sponsor this program. I've had the pleasure of hearing Julie speak on a couple of occasions. You will be educated, you will be entertained, and this is a very engaging presentation. So thank you for your participation. I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. And thank you again to Maureen and Doug for having us.
Thank you, Michelle. And again, thanks to Quabbin Valley Healthcare for sponsoring tonight's talk. Next, I'd like to introduce our speaker for this evening. Julie Nowak has been the LGBTQIA+ Initiative Program Coordinator at Springwell BayPath Elder Services for the last 5 years. In her position as LGBTQIA+ Initiative Program Coordinator, Julie provides support and success to the LGBTQ+ seniors facing the typical challenges of aging, which, because of their sexual orientation and gender identity, they are at higher risk for abuse, isolation, discrimination, and exploitation. A passion of Julie's is the opportunity to provide educational training sessions to healthcare professionals in an effort to educate practitioners about creating a safe space and LGBTQ+ cultural competency training. Julie, welcome and take the stage.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Doug, Michelle, and Maureen, for all you've done to get me here. It's great to meet you all tonight. Welcome, friends. Take a breath, get settled, make yourselves at home, get a snack if you need one, a drink if you need to stretch, take a break, by all means do so. Relax, stay curious. The house rule that I have is very simple. Bill and Ted had it right. Be excellent to each other. Listen with open minds. Speak from your heart, use I statements, and please, if you have questions at any time, ask them. Use the words you have to ask what you want to know. If there are newer, more affirming words that have come into use since then, I will use them in my reply and reflect a little bit about why the shift has occurred. Okay? So stay curious and enjoy. I'm so glad you're all here tonight. Welcome, friends. And as I said, welcome, friends. Why are we not? One moment, please. Why are we not slide showing? There we go. Thank you for your patience. So you can see we're all more alike than we are different. We all have these moments on Zoom saying, why is it doing that? Thanks for your patience. So good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, wait. That's how I was taught to do a big intro, right? And probably you were too. And I did that for quite a while when I started this job. And finally, one of my young friends at the college said, you're leaving out a lot of folks, including yourself. So how's that really working for you? Fair point. You can bring in everybody by making an inclusive space, by opening your language, by saying, welcome friends. I have room to make new friends. I have room for people who identify as male, female, non-binary, both, neither. All the possibilities are welcome. That's what this is all about. Opening space and echoing words that the person is using to self-identify. Up in the corner, you do see the current incarnation of the rainbow flag. Some of you may have seen this driving around town at libraries or places of worship. If you haven't seen the newest incarnation, I'll read it for you very quickly. The traditional rainbow flag, of course, from the 70s. The black and brown stripes were added next. The brown stripe brings people and communities of color to the front, center, and heart of our conversation, brings those voices, which unfortunately are all too often marginalized, both within and outside the rainbow community, brings them to the mic if they want to take the mic, by all means, and the rest of us can listen, step back, and learn. The black stripe remembers everyone lost to AIDS. It also honors people living with HIV, working to end the stigma and find a cure, and we are so close. It's almost surreal to say that. You might recognize the trans pride colors. They were added next. When you see them later on the flag, it's pink for girls, blue for boys, and the white section is where some people remain very comfortably and others cross over, and some cross back and forth. More on that later. And the newest chevron is the intersex pride colors. More on our intersex friends soon. The yellow field, that's that third baby color, right? Pink, blue, yellow, it's baby. And then the pink and blue are in a harmonious circle, perfect blended as it is. More on this a bit later. If I use a word you don't know, feel free to ask. I will generally come back round to it, but by all means, jump in. So you can be playful, you can be formal, welcome friends, greetings and salutations, gentle thems. When I'm visiting the colleges, I do hear them saying, hey, guys and gals and non-binary pals. Hi, folks. Folks with an X, you may have seen this. Younger generations tend to use it more often than us older generations. X, remember math class and all those word problems? I'm not going to make you solve it. X is all the possibilities. That's why we have in Massachusetts, M, F, and X driver's license gender markers, X for the non-binary folks. And you can actually get an X passport marker now for the US, which is very exciting. And yes, when I visit my younger friends, I do see them tumbling together. Oh, hello, what's up, glitter kittens? What are glitter kittens? If you are finding your way forward out of the closet and you have this tender new identity you're sharing with the world more and more bravely, you're playful, it's exciting. You're curious, like a kitten. You get startled easily sometimes. Yeah, there's a kittenish aspect to it. And if you are sharing this dearly held identity with us, oh, you bet we're going to celebrate that and throw some glitter on that kitten. Yes, we are. I have a lot of pronouns going on in my info in the corner. I'll admit 3 is a lot, and I have them stacked up this way for this talk. I do use all 3 at different times, and I'll go into it more deeply later, but that's why there's so many. Again, feel free to jump in anytime with questions. And here we go. They is correct. In 2019, the singular they, which is how it's phrased, used for one person, they, them pronouns, just like you'd use she, her, or he, him, was the word of the year in Merriam-Webster's dictionary because it had jumped so much in the previous years and particularly in that year in online usage. This is the hot word. This is the word of the moment that people need to accurately self-identify. It's not really new. You can see it goes back into the Middle Ages, the first time we noticed it. Shakespeare used it. Other authors have used it as well. Sam Smith used it in the modern sense when they came out as non-binary. Sam does not identify strongly or solely as male or female. All of that is part of who Sam is. And so Sam came out and said, I'd like you to use they, them pronouns. They feel right, and that's what I'm going to do going forward to be my best authentic self. And that's the modern usage, the singular they. Someone asked when I put this slide up earlier, wait, if Sam is they, why is Sam not we? And again, this is the singular they. So Sam is still one person. There are just many facets to their identity. Generally, you wouldn't have we unless you're the Queen of England. Fun fact, we use the singular they every day. We just don't think about it. Someone called, oh, what do they want? It is more of a deliberate step, I feel, for older generations. And I firmly count myself, I'm Gen X, firmly count myself in that, to deliberately say they is visiting, or even they are visiting about one person. But with practice, we can do it. My younger colleagues, especially working in rainbow outreach circles, offer the pronouns. They are quick. This is their daily language. I am running a bit to keep up, but it's well worth the exertion because it means that I meet people where they are and I know who they are. They're sharing that truth with me. It's a good place to be. And a little thinking can make it work very easily. Timothy Leduc was our first out and proud non-binary Winter Olympian. And Timothy asked the media to refer to them as the lifting partner in the skating duo. Easy breezy. Everyone was seen, understood, respected. Timothy's pronouns were correct. Sometimes when I'm typing something up and someone uses they pronouns, I have to kind of reconfigure it a little bit to get the flow in my head, but a little reconfiguration like a Rubik's Cube, and it will flow. Labels, I think, are very useful starting places. But a word has a lot of meanings, usually. For instance, fire is a candle in a window to light you home, is a cozy hearth to gather round, is run for your lives, the woods are ablaze. All of that is in fire, that one little word. Similarly, in the words in the LGBTQIA+ lineup, none of them is a monolith, right? Each little word, there's so many different sorts of people in each stripe of the rainbow. So just bear that in mind. We are painting with a very broad brush in this talk. LGBTQIA+ is the most common lineup of the letters that you will see. And that's because we have had huge efforts by the intersex and asexual activists to boost visibility, to make people understand better where they're coming from. They've done some tremendous work and we want to salute that. And they've also really had to kind of fight to be seen and put into the lineup. More on that later. So we do want to honor all their hard work and support them by adding in the IA at the end. The plus, of course, like that X in math class, the plus gives room for all the other identities. And you might have seen it go out to like 12 or even 16 letters I've seen. These are the most commonly seen ones. If you see a letter 2, that will be two-spirit, which is a term that originated in the Native American community tends to be used just within that community. You might hear First Nations and Indigenous people use it, but they really discourage it being used outside those populations because of its origin. It's really a very sacred term. If you're going to talk about the LGBTQIA plus community, but you don't say it every day, several times a day, as I do. And believe me, I practiced in a mirror a lot when I started this job so that I could say it with rhythm. You'll hear like politicians, LGBTQ, there's that little pause. If you feel like you're going to stall, either practice in front of a mirror, or you can just say the rainbow community, or gender and sexual minorities, the GSM population, GSM community, those are fine. Just land it with intent. That will go a long way towards building trust. And yes, when I'm talking within our circles in particular, I may say our beloved alphabet soup. The thing about labels is they don't necessarily stick forever. If your labels start to come loose, that's okay. We change profoundly over the course of a lifetime in every dimension of our being. This is no different. Some of my labels have been loosening up over the past year or so. I can feel it. And yeah, it's a little disconcerting, like, oh, what's this? But I also know that if I just breathe and live my way forward into my next best truth, it will be okay. Whatever it is will make sense when it makes sense. As we start looking at affirming language tonight, it is important to understand that sexual orientation and gender identity are two different things. They're often confused or conflated, and they do cast ripples into the greater pond of oneself that, intersect and affect one another, but they're two very different things. Sexual orientation is who you love. To whom are you attracted romantically and or sexually? Gender identity is who you are. Your sense of yourself as male, female, both, neither, might be fluid, could be right in between. So sexual orientation has an external focus. It involves other people, usually, not always, but generally. Your gender identity is a very deeply held, internally focused knowing. I've also heard this phrase, sexual orientation is who you go to bed with, should you so choose, and all consent. And maybe that's no one, and that's valid too. Gender identity is who you go to bed as. Any questions on that? And if you need to think it over for a bit, that's okay too. It's also important to understand that sex and gender are two different things, and they're very often used interchangeably when we speak, but they're not quite the same. Our robot friend is going to help me explain. Sex is the parts, the hardware. Could be genitalia, chromosomes, hormones, all of the pieces of the body, however small they might be, that contribute to sexual characteristics. Gender is the software program running on that hardwared body. These internally held knowing or sense of oneself as male, female, neither, both, etc. For most people, like a huge majority of people, the software program matches the hardware. For some people, it does not align somehow. We'll explore that more in depth shortly. This is sort of what I consider to be the bones of affirming language, and we can flesh this out as we continue our conversation tonight. And this is the conversation. Please do feel free to ask questions. And I do not claim to have all the answers. I am learning too with every talk I give, and that's a good thing. But I will do my best to answer. And if I don't know, I'll tell you that too, and I will find out and get back to you. Affirming language is just what it sounds like. It's language that affirms the person's identity. They've told you who they are, believe them, echo the words they're using to self-describe or self-identify. That's the heart of this. Again, sexual orientation and gender are two different things. Your sexual identity is how you think of yourself as a sexual being. And maybe that's just your own personal business, and that's fine. Maybe you're going to date one or a few people and talk about it with them. Maybe you're going to go on your blog and tell the whole world what you think about this. It's a very personal choice. Now, note when I say choice, particularly when we're talking about sexual orientation, the choice is not in whether you're straight or gay or bi, etc. We don't understand where, but it's wired into us somewhere in our mysterious heart. Just like being left-handed or having green eyes, being gay, all wired in somewhere deep within. That's not a choice. The choice comes with when and how you communicate this information to other people around you, and that's very personal. Andy Warhol is a gay icon for the ages, and you probably know that gay would refer to generally a man attracted to other men. Andy played it very coy in interviews because that got people to come back with cameras and microphones for another interview. Some of you might be fans of The Wire. Omar is a character who has passionate relationships with other men across the series, but never refers to himself as gay. Other characters speculate that he's gay, sometimes with slurs, but Omar just goes serenely on his way. He knows exactly who he is and who he loves, and just walks his path in authenticity. Michael K. Williams, who played Omar, when he was interviewed about his role, never talked about his own sexuality. He said, "I'm here to talk about Omar, and I'm here to talk about my craft and the show." Fair. So it's very personal about how you share this information. You may know that gay is an umbrella term. You can use it to refer to men or women. I work with elders, so if you do too, you may encounter an older woman who says, "Oh, don't call me gay, please. I'm a lesbian. We worked very hard to build identity and community, and I'd like you to honor that." Fine. Echo the words back that she is using to self-identify. Honor that. Very welcoming. This is typically what we'd call an owl, an older, wiser lesbian. I aspire to become one someday. Lesbian, of course, is a woman attracted to other women. Kate McKinnon remembers being 12 years old, watching Ellen DeGeneres come out on TV. And 12-year-old Kate burst into tears, thinking, "Oh, thank God, I can be gay and be on TV." Visibility changes lives for the better, and it saves lives. And now Kate's got her own Emmys. I want to pop up to the corner for a moment to mention our ACE friends. People who are asexual don't experience sexual attraction. On the whole, they do not. Some may be attracted to someone romantically and eventually feel more of that, but generally speaking, if you are ace, you don't get that zing. It's just not there. They don't have that piece of the puzzle. Notice when I say that, their puzzle's not incomplete. They just have a different puzzle that's full and beautiful. And they're not afraid, they're not confused, they're not wrong. They're just not interested. That's a terrific book on the subject, by the way, by a community member. And I mentioned our ACE friends. Remember, they're in the lineup now, LGBTQIA+, because they fought really hard showing up at Pride events saying, "We're here. This is a valid sexual orientation. We belong here. You need to listen to us and take us seriously." They've done great work. Straight, you probably know, is a slang term for heterosexual folks, men attracted to women or vice versa. This is probably 80% of any audience I address. Bisexual. We need a little extra love for the bees, please. Not because they're greedy, but because that's just one of the many myths, misunderstandings, and misconceptions that our beloved bees encounter both within and outside the rainbow community. Let's take a look. So if someone is bisexual, they're attracted to both males and females, not necessarily equally or at the same time. Some people go in cycles. Some people are focused on one person at a time. Some people might be attracted to two. It's very varied. But a whole lot of people think that a bisexual walks into a party and wants to date everybody in the room. I would call that wildly ambitious and deeply self-confident. And you do you, but for most of us, including the bisexuals that I know, dating one or a few people is plenty with the rest of our busy lives going on. They also get a sense that they haven't picked a team. Yes, they have. They're Team B. Actually, the widest stripe in the rainbow. There are a lot of people with bisexual feelings. Some of you might think back, as I say this, to the Kinsey report in 48, was a report, anonymous survey of sexuality in America, and they were expecting there'd be like a few homosexual people and a whole bunch of heterosexual people. And instead they got this big, neat diagonal, all these people anonymously reporting, yes, I've had these feelings for both men and women. That was an absolute wake-up call to America. Wow, this is quite common. They get misunderstood a lot. They get thought to be, you might have heard people say, oh, well, they're always going back and forth. No. What happens is, when are bisexuals most visible? If Susie was dating a fella and now she's dating a lady, oh, you're bi, right? So they often become visible to friend networks when they make such a switch. They're still bisexual, nothing's really changed, just they've met somebody new. But that's what feeds into this myth of, oh, they're always dashing back and forth across that male-female divide. No, they're not. And then there's unintentional erasure. Watch this happen. Let me tell you a little story about Jack and Diane. Jack and Diane are working hard at the bisexual info group. They're putting together flyers. They've got pins, things to hand out tomorrow at the festival. Hey, you want to go to that cute little coffee shop, take a break, the new one? Sure. Well, Jack and Diane walk into the coffee shop. They don't know them. Unless they've got their B pins on and they're passing out flyers, they're probably going to be mistaken for a straight couple, which is a different social dynamic. And a little part of them, which is not so little, is erased. It's just not seen. Well, it doesn't work out as more with Jack and Diane, but don't worry, they're still friends. In fact, Diane introduced Jack to Dwayne. Hey, would you like to go to that new Italian place down the way? Oh, sure. Jack and Dwayne walk into the new restaurant. They're probably read as maybe a gay couple, and that's a very different social dynamic. So you can see how our beloved bees kind of partly or completely disappear. If someone tells you that they're bi, believe them. They absolutely are real. They know who they are. Some of our most famous bees are in the corner: Frida Kahlo, Marlon Brando, and Alice Walker. Those of you who are online a lot, you may be familiar with the term sapphic. That's been rising particularly fast in a resurgence in the last couple of years. We have to go back to the island of Lesbos in ancient Greece, from which we get the term lesbian, and the poet Sappho, who was a poetess, and among her poems were poems to some other lovely ladies. And from her, we get the term sapphic. Sapphic is an umbrella term, so other terms can cluster under it. It's for women who are attracted to other women. So you can fit so many identities under that umbrella: bisexuals, lesbians, pansexuals, polysexuals, women loving women, which, along with men loving men, are terms you may hear in communities of color in particular, and especially in the African American community. You may also hear same gender loving, or SGL. And the reason for those terms are, when we were kind of turning that corner in the late 90s, early aughts, and suddenly there were gay characters on TV and in the movies. They were usually played for laughs. They were very funny and entertaining, but they were comedy characters for the most part, and they were almost always white. But this is also the time when, oh, you're gay. Oh, I kind of understand that now. Yes, they're gay folks, yes. And a lot of the people in these communities trying to have these conversations said, yeah, but not like that. That's some kind of caricature for, humor and marketing. That's not what I'm talking about. That's not my lived experience. And so they came up with terms like, I'm a man-loving man. I'm a same gender loving person. Just walking forward in all their authenticity, sure and mature, knowing who they are. And that would bring us back to why Omar is so many people's favorite character on The Wire. If you are a fan of Omar and you don't know, Michael K. Williams did write a biography. Sadly, it's posthumously released, but we do have it to remember him. And he shared very freely about his life in that. So you might want to pick that up. Moving over to gender identity. As we discussed earlier, this is your deeply held internal sense of yourself as male, female, neither, both, in between. To me, I think you catch it in your gaze. Okay, first thing this morning, right? Your hair is still sticking up funny. You look in the mirror. Good morning, me. Let's seize the day. How are we going to do this? Somewhere in that glance into your own eyes, that certainty, that moment where you know who you are, let's start the day, me, that kind of knowing is where gender identity is. Gender is not between your legs, it's between your ears. And some of my late blooming trans ladies have told me it's in my heart. I well believe them. Gender expression, okay, second cup of coffee, got to face the day. There's a lot of gendered moments through the day. All these expectations put upon us. If you don't believe me, go buy shampoo. Are you supposed to buy the pink bottle with the roses or the wood grain bottle with the big bold neon brick letters? There's a lot of different ways to express my gender identity to other people I meet through the day to help cue them in to who I am and to help them better see that part of my identity. How will I do my hair? Makeup today? Maybe. A skirt, a tie, all three. How will you use your hands when you talk? How will you use your voice? There are a lot of different gender cues. Prince was a fabulous example of gender expression at its finest. Prince used he, him pronouns and for sure identified as male all his days. But look at those lyrics. I'm not a woman. I'm not a man. I am something you will never understand. Prince brought everything to the party. Masculinity, femininity, electricity. It's what made him such a transfixing performer. That's what we want for everyone in the world. Bring your best, fullest self to the party, because it's just going to be a great world if we can all do that. Transgender. Trans, like transit or transition, to go across. Folks who are transgender, the sex they were assigned at birth, doctor took their best guess when you arrived, it's a boy, it's a girl. The sex they were assigned at birth does not align somehow with their gender identity. It does not match society's expectations. For most people, that's not the case, but for some people, there is this difference. It could be a little, it could be fluid, it could be a lot. It could be disaligned to the point where you are experiencing gender dysphoria. You probably know the word euphoria, everything is lovely and great. Dysphoria is the opposite of that feeling. I'll speak for myself. In my moments of gender dysphoria, I feel it like if you go to the optometrist and they give you the wrong eyeglasses and everything's a little off, you're off balance, it's kind of fuzzy, the world's a little wavy and warped, it's kind of that feeling. I've had other people tell me that if they're misgendered, someone uses incorrect pronouns to refer to them, calls them sir when it should be ma'am, it feels like a bucket of ice water. just falling over them. And think about it, you'd feel that for a while, right? It's not like a moment, it lingers. Another activist said, I start out the day with my gender dysphoria backpack, and most days it's pretty light, some days it's empty. Those are great days. And I go through the day, and every time someone misgenders me and says, sir, I have to say, ma'am or miss, it's like a rock gets added to the backpack. And some days at the end of the day, it's so heavy and I'm so tired. And so this is why it's so important to listen for the pronouns the person is using and echo them back to affirm and welcome them, because we don't want to put more rocks in anybody's backpack. You can see that trans is an umbrella term. Don't worry that you can't read all the words. There's two on one side. On the binary side of the trans umbrella, male and female have a very certain, sure, full, definite sense of self as either male or female. A whole lot of other folks with an X have a sense somewhere on the non-binary side. There's all kinds of terms: genderqueer, gender fluid, non-binary, agender. There's all sorts, and more every day with the speed that the young people can type on those keys, right? The internet has been a powerful tool to change the language. If you don't know a lot about trans issues, but you want to learn more, I thoroughly recommend What's the Tea by Juno Dawson. That's a great introduction and could be used for family conversations amongst generations as well, to get everyone on the same page with the bones of affirming language. Cisgender is a term that I think more people are recognizing on this slide, but I think it's still the one people look at, go, what's that? So cis is another Latin prefix, same side as. You usually only see it with like cisalpine, this side of the Alps. But it makes a really handy word if you put it together with cisgender. So in this case, you're cisgender. This is most people. The sex you were assigned at birth and your gender identity align. So Ellen DeGeneres is a cisgender lesbian. She was assigned female at birth. She identifies as female. She's in love with her wife, so she's a lesbian. Okay, so two different categories: gender identity and sexual orientation. To that point, can you be transgender and gay? Yes, you can. Met a lovely couple over the summer. You can be trans, remember that's about gender identity, and have any of the sexual orientations. Ace, bi, gay, lesbian, sapphic, all of that. And I think that speaks profoundly to how deeply these forces and how strongly they run within us. Queer. I'm careful with the Q word when I'm talking with elders. Let's say 65 and up. They understand that the word was desperately and deliberately reclaimed in the depths of the AIDS crisis, when shock tactics meant visibility, which forced conversations and forced the government to finally take real action to begin to turn the tide and slow the crisis. The young people use queer as a huge, big, bold, bright umbrella term. Happy Pride, get on under the queer umbrella. There's room for everybody. Bless them, they have never heard it as a slur, and it blows their minds that some of the older folks hear it differently. So if I'm talking with elders, even though I very comfortably identify as queer, I hold off on it. I listen to hear how or if they're using the word. Because sometimes if you say the Q word, you'll see the shoulders go up and the eyes tighten. There's that flinch at the echo of when they heard that word hurled against them in their youth, when they were, pushed in the schoolyard or hassled on the street. So I always listen with older folks. Now, that said, if we have an intergenerational luncheon and the young people are identify as genderqueer and pansexual, we will have a great conversation about language and what words mean to people. The heart of it, from any generation, is listening to how they use the word and echoing it back. And sometimes I'll say, I haven't heard that word before. That's new for me. Would you like to tell me a bit more about what it means and why it's so special or important to you? And if they say no, I can certainly Google it, but sometimes I can take that moment and we can have a great conversation. If you don't like labels, but you think that you're probably not cisgender and you're probably not heterosexual, the unlabeled pride flag is for you. They made their own flag, which I think is marvelous. Labels, not my thing. But yeah, I'm over here and still proud. SOFAs, I love this word. Significant others, family, friends, and allies are SOFAs. Thanks for being here tonight, beautiful SOFAs. How was your webinar? I found out I'm a SOFA. And if you're an ally, that's your flag. And you can actually put that on as a pin. People from the rainbow community will generally recognize what that means. Or you might have a sticker on your lanyard. That was a whole lot of words. Some were familiar and some might not have been. Any questions before we continue? Just use the words you have to ask what you want to know. Okay, if something comes to you, by all means, jump in. I mentioned our intersex friends earlier and the great work they've been doing in the past few decades. So someone who is born intersex, and they're more common than you probably think. I certainly was surprised when I found this out. They're born with variations in sexual characteristics that don't fit nicely or neatly into the male or female box. There's a spread. They kind of fit in both. This could be visible at birth. The doctor takes a look at the baby's genitals and there is some ambiguity that, oh, this baby was born intersex. It could become evident when puberty hits. Oh, you have those parts inside. You're actually intersex. And some people don't know unless they get a karyotype done, which reads the chromosomes. And some people will go their whole lives not knowing. So there's a huge range of ways to be intersex. And some of the best work these activists have done, one is speaking up and saying, hey, we're here and we are distinct and very proud, and this is what we're all about. But the biggest change they've made, they've really fought for this. It used to be best practice. Child is born intersex and this is visible immediately. The doctors would say, let's tidy that up. And they would perform surgery and well, this one can be a girl, I think, and that one can be a boy. Just do the best they could, sort of cosmetically and functionally. Now, imagine this baby growing up, and if you're assigned a gender role that doesn't fit, just think about going through your day-to-day and everyone addressed you with the wrong pronouns and expected you to be the other gender. How disorienting would that be? Now try doing that for several years or a lifetime. In far too many cases, this was catastrophic. And so these activists really have fought. The internet helped them get together and raise their voices, and they've changed best practices. Now, with very rare exceptions, which would be like life-threatening variations, that's really, really rare. Now, they let the baby be. Let them grow. Let them find their words. You can give them a name. You can assign a gender, but know that it might change as the child finds their own words and tells you who they are. And guess what? These kids are thriving. They are doing so well. They don't have any unwanted surgeries. They're just their best selves. Hats off to these brave activists. And I said they were more common than you probably think. They're about as common as natural redheads. They're born every week at local hospitals. So this was a big shift that these activists pulled off. Hats off to them. And back to their colors, right? There's that third baby color, pink, blue, yellow. It's a baby. We're weird about gender. We assign it before the kids even arrived. And that pink and blue, whole and perfect. They're not pathologized, they're not ill, they're perfect as they are. That's what that circle is. It is important to note that people who are intersex do not tend to identify as trans, but some do identify as non-binary. So they're their own distinct stripe in the rainbow. Any questions on that? Science is showing us more and more clearly every week that gender is not a binary, which is what I was taught, but a spectrum. And we can see that in some of the examples we've talked about already. There are so many ways to move authentically and comfortably through this world. Remember that this slide is about gender, not sexual orientation. So for those of you who are sitting there thinking, wait, aren't there straight allies in this lineup? Yes, there are. And some people don't fit comfortably into that lineup. Our friend on the left identifies as agender, does not have a sense of self as male or female. One activist put it, I don't feel any of that. I just feel like me. They use they, them pronouns. That would be a great space to use those pronouns. And they're very comfortable that way. They feel very real, seen, respected, and authentic. Janelle Monáe, whom some of you might know from the Grammys this week, identifies as non-binary, does not feel solely or strongly male or female. In a recent interview, they said, I am everything. Janelle uses both they and she pronouns. Janelle also identifies as pansexual. Okay, so when I ran into this word, this is a newer one to me, I thought, okay, so if bi is two and pan like panorama, that's all. Okay, so a pansexual walks into a party and wants to date everybody in the room. Nope, that's that old bisexual myth. I just converted it in my head. I fell for it too. Nope, nope, nope. One of my young friends kindly set me on the right path, said, no, you've got it backwards. It's not that we're attracted to everybody. If you're pansexual, you're attracted to someone, or you may be attracted to someone, regardless of gender. We're attracted to hearts, not parts. We vibe and we click and we groove. We can figure out the rest of it. They may be the wisest ones among us. Pans, by the way, don't come out of the closet. They fall out of the kitchen cupboard. This would have been little me if I had only had the words in second grade, fifth grade, seventh grade, high school. I did not. We used the words we had. If you can't read the words, sorry, teacher, but where do the kids whose most salient identity isn't gender and instead self-identify as awesome line up? Little me pinballed back and forth between the boys and girls all over the playground and in the hallways. When we were playing house in the schoolyard, we didn't have the words for it, but we understood that I didn't fit anywhere except as the cat from outer space, or sometimes I was Thing from the Addams Family. And we all just understood somehow that that was the comfortable space for me. I identify as gender fluid. I have always had a sort of traveling sense of gender. It just moves around throughout the day, sometimes across an hour. I don't know when it will happen. I don't usually know why. I was reading in bed the other night and I felt it veer over to the other pole. And I thought, really? I'm just lying here. I didn't do a thing. Why? It just does. Fifth grade, the hormones hit. Suddenly the girls didn't want anything to do with me and the boys thought the girls were icky. So that was a very lonely and miserable time. Then we began hearing words and I began getting slurs thrown at me. That was not a lot of fun. Got to high school, we still didn't have the words we needed, but I ran into a whole bunch of other unusual friends who were into science fiction and fantasy and learning to play Dungeons and Dragons. And we used the words we had to talk about other ways of being and other ways of communicating and other worlds and other selves. Fully 2/3 of that table at the lunchtime cafeteria came out in various ways later in life. We found each other and we knew each other. We just didn't have the words that the young people have today, thanks to the internet. But we built community anyway. As I say, gender fluid, to me, the best definition I can give you, I know it's hard perhaps to understand, it's pretty hard to explain it, It feels like the bubble in the spirit level. It just kind of floats around through my day. It's always been this way. I'm very comfortable with it. Sometimes I'm a little like, why are you doing that? But just part of me. Folks who are genderqueer, as you might guess from that sharper term, are a little more elbows out about it. They somehow don't fit into those neat little MF boxes. They might even not fit into the X box comfortably. Wherever they are, they're elbows out about it. Usually they're activists, often they're artists as well, performing artists. They're making more room, saying, hey, I know I need a little more elbow room to be my best authentic self. And if I do, I know there's others out there who need this space. They're educating, they're connecting, they're communicating to help open space. And that's another big part of all of this, making welcome by opening space. Any questions? I get this question a lot. What's the difference between drag and transgender? So, drag is a performance. The drag is the costume, the makeup, the character. It's exaggerated, it's elaborate. Drag makes fun of everything. If you think about Bugs Bunny, right? It's that humor. Why do we do this thing as a society? And should we keep doing it or could we do better? That's the heart of drag. It just flips over all kinds of expectations and asks questions. But at the end of the night, the drag artists on the left of your screen take off all their drag and then they go down to unwind with a drink at the pub or they go to bed. But the character, the drag, is put away neatly. They go as themselves wherever they're going for the evening. The trans folks on the right, this is authenticity. This is who they are 24/7. It's not something that they're putting on for effect. They're just trying to express their most authentic selves to others, to be seen as who they truly are as they move through their day. And yeah, there are trans drag artists. There always have been. In that case, the drag is the performance that comes off, and the trans performer would continue with possibly her evening, might be his, might be there. Any questions? So just remember, it's performance versus authenticity. And I would err on the side of assuming authenticity. I have a friend who works in outreach to trans elders, and she went somewhere and had a great conversation with the office staff, called her she, her, correct name, correct pronouns, very welcoming. And then one person said, and they absolutely meant it and didn't mean to cause offense, are you doing a show later? No, this is the real me. So when in doubt, assume this is who the person is telling you they are. Echo their words back. If they tell you, hey, I'm doing a drag show later, then you're pretty sure. Listening is the heart of this. I thought this was a fabulous statement by this non-binary activist. Joshua Ferguson was the person who caused Canada, first in one province and then across the whole country, to have X gender markers on official documents. That's a big change from one determined person who said, this doesn't fit me. Can you do better? You really must. I wasn't born into the wrong body. I was born into a culture that has a narrow understanding of how bodies determine sex and gender for life. That's a lot. As you can see, we have gender reveal parties before the baby's even arrived. And we're starting this whole narrative, this pre-planned path, which may or may not fit. And if I'd had Alok Vaid Menon's Beyond the Gender Binary book, if I could reach through time and hand that book to 16-year-old me, things would have made a lot more sense a lot sooner. I didn't find the words I needed started in college, but I was really into my 30s before I began finding the language that said, that's the feeling. That's what it is. That says it well. Which brings us around to pronouns. So you can ask, you can offer your own pronouns, and you've probably seen that done in emails, particularly if you're corresponding with colleges. We encourage that. We don't require it because I don't want someone who's struggling to find that moment to say, hey, my pronouns actually are, I don't want them to have to look at the wrong pronouns 40 times a day. I encourage pronoun use, but I certainly understand if someone doesn't want to put them in their email. If it's an older person, you could ask, how would you like me to address you? This also works if they've come in and you're not sure what the relationship is. And how would you like me to address you in relation to Gloria? Oh, I'm her driver. I'm her companion person. I'm her partner, spouse, sweetheart. Listen for the words they're using and echo them back. And if it's elders, if they're using an older term, maybe some younger people in your life have said, oh, we really don't say that anymore. If that's the term they're using, you can echo it back or just note it. You don't maybe have to say it, but know that that term is very valid for them and you want to respect that. For a younger person, I might ask, what are your pronouns? Some of you will remember just about 5 or 6 years ago, you would ask this as, what are your preferred pronouns? And then the next young generation came up and said, oh, they're not preferred. I'm not picking them at a buffet. They are my pronouns. I'm telling you which pronouns are correct for me. Fair point. What are your pronouns? Often younger people will have a badge or pin. It might tell you a little bit more about their hobbies and interests as well to start conversations. The Dungeons and Dragons dice are mine. I also have one here tonight. That can give you a cue. Also watch for gender expression. If you're not sure, some of these folks walked in and you might think, not sure. They, them is a perfectly polite and respectful neutral. They would like to know. And then listen, if you hear a different pronoun, you can adjust your language to echo that. And I go a long way with, our friend here would like to know. Our guest here is curious about. Our new colleague was asking. You see how much space that opens? They can then somewhere in their conversation cue me with pronouns with a name, but it's polite, it's friendly, it's gender neutral. And I've never had anybody get mad at me for calling them my friend. I will also note for those who are non-binary, you don't have to look any particular way to be non-binary. You don't have to look androgynous. You don't have to look like a neutral. If the person is telling you, hey, just so you know, I'm NB, believe them. But what if you have a friend who switched pronouns? This has happened to a lot of people since COVID. So what happened? COVID locked us all down, right? And we all moved on to Zoom. And we all looked at ourselves on Zoom screens for 2, 4, 5, 8 hours a day. We don't look at ourselves that long in a typical day. There's been a huge amount of people sitting at home thinking, you know, this doesn't match what I'm feeling. What is this feeling? In the trans community, they say, boy, the pandemic sure has cracked a lot of eggs. That egg, right? It protects you, it nourishes you, it shelters you, and then you outgrow it and your wings spread. There are a lot of people coming out as trans or non-binary, gender expansive, which you can probably guess somewhere just pushing past just male, female options. A lot of folks coming out at this time. And a lot of late bloomers too that I've been meeting. So if your friend has recently changed pronouns, or your colleague, who hopefully is also your friend, you're probably going to get the pronouns wrong. In fact, you will. We all will. It's going to happen, especially if you've known them a long time with another set of pronouns. Just do your best. If you goof up, and you will, I have done it spectacularly. And even in that moment of, oh no, I just said that, I don't say that out loud. You don't want to make the moment big. That's the key here. Don't go, oh, I'm a terrible person. Okay, that just makes it bigger. And now the moment's longer and now it's weird. Don't make it weird. I'm sorry, I meant to say she. I'm sorry, it was not my intent to misgender you. I'll keep working to do better. Notice I say working, not trying. It's like Yoda, right? Do or do not. There is no try. Just keep working at it. Absolutely do your best to get those pronouns right, because the more you do it, the sooner it will happen and you'll get into the new rhythm. And your friend may flub up pronouns too. I have a dear friend who came out as trans during the pandemic, and sometimes she goofs up and sometimes I goof up, and we've both gotten better. And you know, we have a great relationship. We can laugh at each other and say, oh, that was you. If you think that the person is upset by this, you can tell, oh, that landed hard. Check on them, or have a friend check in with them who knows them better. Just make sure they're okay, have their back. And using the right pronouns doesn't only happen when they're in the room. If you're talking about your friend or colleague in the break room, or you're talking on the phone about your loved one, get those pronouns right. Do your best. That's how you really are a great ally. It's consistent. I see some questions appearing. Go ahead, please. I think so. I see the count go up.
Julie, there is a comment in the
Sure.
chat. Michelle said, I'm so indoctrinated to say yes, ma'am, or no, sir.
Mhm.
It's especially hard when ordering from the drive-through or talking on the phone, because we make that determination by the voice we hear.
Hey, great comment. And you can't always go by voice. Especially, I'm thinking of my late blooming trans ladies who were assigned male at birth. They didn't have hormone blockers when they were adolescents, so their voices very often have dropped. And I also know a young man when he calls, a lot of the receptionists think it's a woman calling. I say, no, he, him pronouns. And that's not by any means exclusive to the rainbow community. You were probably sitting there at home thinking of people you've met. Oh yeah, that would be true. So I have, Michelle, great comment, because I too was raised to think that way and had to break out of that training of don't assume, listen for the pronouns. And I, over particularly the last 5 years, but even before that, I had started with, how are you today, my friend? It is so good to see you. Thanks, friends. It is great to see you today. You can go a long way with my friend, our guest. And I know that it does take time to break the yes, ma'am, yes, sir. It's, I think, worth doing, and there's ways to still be respectful. I know it's particularly hard for people who've moved up from down south, because that's so much a part of the culture down there. You know, the young people, as they're growing up, are trained, yes, sir, yes, ma'am. Go ahead, Jen.
Julie, I have another comment and question. I just want to remind everyone, please put your questions in the Q&A section, not in the chat, because our speaker can't see those questions. So if you use the Q&A. But Angela says, I've been learning that trans is a bigger umbrella than I thought. Does someone who identify as trans typically use pronouns of the opposite sex assigned at birth? Also, can you explain again the difference between trans and non-binary? Are they both gender identities?
Sure, that's a terrific question. Okay, so as you've discovered, and I did too, as I took on this job, the trans umbrella is very big. You'll sometimes see the trans asterisk, it's pronounced trans star, the trans star community. And that's transgender, non-binary, gender expansive would be the 3 big categories under that umbrella. And so if someone identifies as trans, very often they identify as male or female. And that would be a gender that is different from the sex they were assigned at birth. And so there you would say, and trans is also an adjective. So you could say Laverne Cox is a trans woman. Chaz Bono is a trans man. It's always where they are now. That's how you remember it. On the non-binary side of the umbrella, there's all of us folks who don't identify solely as male or female, or some don't identify as either. There's all these different identities. And that's, so male and female are the traditional gender binary, and the non-binary folks are on the other side. Feel free to ask if that didn't make sense. Or if I can be more clear about some aspect of your question. You had some good comments in there. Doug, is there a way you could catch that Q&A? I see the one, but I'm a little afraid to click it or I'll lose my
Yeah, no,
screen.
Angela said perfect. Thank you.
Okay, great. And as you're all thinking it over, by all means, if something else occurs to you, please hop in. Doug, thank you for your help, for being my chat buddy.
Sure.
And down in the corner of the screen, if you think your friend is particularly, upset, doesn't have to be you that did it. Somebody misgendered them and they're having a tough day. You could bring cupcakes, maybe in the trans pride colors. And that can go a long way. The first time we tabled at First Event, which is a huge transgender and gender expansive community convention in Boston, I got Hershey's Kisses. And at this time of year, you can mix them up to get the trans pride colors with the special bags. And we put them all over the table. I mention this because that alone, people weren't quite sure why we were there or what elder services were, or if they needed them, or even if they were an elder. But we had the right colors in the Hershey's Kisses, and we had free chocolate. And it showed that we at least understood something, and they came over to talk to us. The little things can make a difference. So what if someone has come out to you, and I'm saying you in general, not you personally. Okay. So say someone in the family or a friend, loved one has come out. And things might be great. My friends were absolutely lovely. They were just waiting. We've been waiting some 20 years. You okay? Come on, let's go have dinner. But sometimes it can be a real shock. And I am part of PFLAG. You might know it. It's Parents, Families, and Friends of LGBTQ+ people. It's a grassroots support group comprised of families with loved ones who are part of the rainbow community. And it's about creating conversations, improving communication, insight, advocacy, and education, and just building bridges to keep the family together, strengthen those bonds. So if someone has come out, let's say I have a grandma on the line and her beloved grandchild has come out as non-binary. What does this mean? Okay, we have that conversation. And she's very upset. This is very new, maybe very alien to anything she's experienced before. She's trying to understand it. Whatever you're feeling is valid. Whether it's great or it's not great at all, or you're crying in the car for a while, that's all valid. Feel it. Okay. Remember that your loved one has told you this because they love you. They want you to know them in honesty, in authenticity. They don't want to hide this part of their life from you. They want to share everything with you as they have, particularly if they've grown up with you. You can reach out for support to your loved ones, other people, other adults, a counselor who is familiar with the rainbow community and is affirming and welcoming. PFLAG support groups are great. If you're talking with your loved one who's come out, who may be in, feeling really raw right now. I remember feeling absolutely like, my skin had been stripped off for several months. Like, wow, everything feels very new and very intense. And are people looking at me? And how do I do this? Okay, so they're going through some things too, very often. Let love lead. You're talking with them. If you don't know what to say, I love you. They'll say it back. That's the heart of it. But if you're feeling often in PFLAG groups, we hear parents talking about a sense of loss. You know, you have this child and you have all of these dreams of what they will become in their future, and probably the wedding and the kids. And that's going to look different now. But we hear a lot of parents express that they feel a sense of loss of that, even though they know that that was just, you know, dreams. But it's still an adjustment period. There can be confusion. What does this mean? Why are they doing this? Because this is who they are. Some parents even talk about grief, that I thought my child would have this life and it's not going to be like that. And I can't stop crying. Okay, go cry in the corner, cry in your car, cry with a friend, but try not to express these feelings to your loved one, especially if it's a young person, because they're going through a lot right now. And piling that on them will just be super intense, and it's not going to go very well for either side. Lead with love. We have a new question in the chat. Okay. And maybe it's going to go just great, in which case feel free to throw a rainbow dance party if both of you want that. Like, don't go all over social media and say, hey, Jenny came out to me today. Let Jenny take the lead if Jenny is the one who has come out. This is their story to tell, their self to share. If Jenny says, yeah, you can tell everybody, go ahead and post, fine, throw the confetti. Because this is, even as scary as coming out can be, oh, scary is just way too small a word. But the relief and the empowerment it brings. My friend who is a late bloomer, he didn't come out as gay until he was 50. He didn't really realize it. He had other things he was contending with in his life. And then when he finally looked inward, he said, oh, it's this. So when he finally came out, it felt like I had been in a swimming pool holding down one of those great big beach balls with all four limbs and all my strength, just trying to keep this down below the surface. And I finally let it go and people could see it. And now I can swim and I can get out of the pool and I can meet people and I can go places and I can be who I am and just bring my full attention to life. And as scary as this is, it's great. If you do have someone who switched pronouns, particularly during the pandemic, here are some tips and tricks to help you remember to get those pronouns right. When I have events, I always make room for pronouns on name tags. I find the younger people very readily put pronouns down. I actually had an older lesbian tell me at the last event, I don't have pronouns. I guess you do. I is a pronoun. And I'm pretty sure you probably have she, her, but I didn't say that. I said, just put on your tag what you're comfortable putting on your tag. Yeah. Meet people where they are. Sitting down to talk with the younger people, she would have noticed that they all had pronouns and they probably asked hers. And that's just a much more organic way for that conversation to happen. A lot of people will have pins. That moth pin is the one I'm wearing tonight. I wear it at parties a lot, just to let people know there's a little more to me than may meet the eye. Oh, and for those of us with split pronouns, I have she, they, and sometimes Z. Z is male and female energy coming together, and sometimes that fits best. Janelle Monáe, whom I mentioned earlier, uses they, she pronouns. When you see a split, if you've ever been to lunch in Montreal, the waiter comes over and says, bonjour, hello, or hello, bonjour. And the first word the waiter uses is their first language. That's your cue. So if it's she, they, after a long time thinking about it, I feel like I fall more on the femme or feminine side. And certainly as people perceive me, they are more likely to say she, but I'm very comfortable with they. Janelle Monáe is very comfortable with they, but understands that she is probably going to come up a lot in interviews.
Julie, one
Go ahead,
question as well.
please.
someone is asking for clarification. You can be non-binary with gender identity and also asexual with a sexual identity. Is that
Correct.
true? Okay.
Yes. So in this case, the person is non-binary. They don't feel strongly or solely male or female, somewhere under that part of the trans umbrella. But they're also asexual or ace. This is a great question. So they just don't tend to feel sexual attraction. They just don't have that zing. And it's a valid sexual orientation. Yes, that's very well asked, that it's the gender identity and the sexual orientation are two different things. And you can see how there's, they cast ripples into the self that will interact and affect one another, but they're two different categories. Does that answer your question? Our friends at, oh, go ahead, Doug.
She didn't respond, so I think it probably was okay.
Okay, that's fine. I just always like
Sorry,
to double check. That's okay.
She did respond and said, yes, thank you.
Cool, thanks. Thanks. I'd always rather double check than just plow right on and ignore something I could maybe help with. Our friends at Friendship Works had a great day. They had everybody in their office bring in a stuffed animal or an action figure or a little knickknack. And that was your non-binary friend for the day. And as they went through the day, going back and forth to each other's desks and whatnot, oh, and my friend so-and-so is visiting. They identify as non-binary. They is curious about this. And you can see how that built the rhythm, right? You may hear on the late night shows, they is a recent Grammy winner. That's grammatically correct now. It sounds odd to us older folks, but it is grammatically correct. So if Sam Smith is on stage this week on the talk shows, you might hear they is visiting with their Grammy winning hit. They are visiting tonight with their Grammy winning hit. Both work. The key thing is that the pronouns are correct for Sam. The mouse in the pocket. This was really clever. This was a dad who had 3 kids, one of whom came out as non-binary, said, please use they, them pronouns. Dad said, thank you for telling me. I will do my best and let's start. But he just couldn't get it. It had been, years knowing this young person, and he kept falling into the old pronouns and then correcting himself. He said, I'm trying. And the kid said, that's okay, Dad. You're doing great. He said, no, I should be doing better. I love you and I want to support you and affirm you. How do I do this better? And then one day he used they, them pronouns for this kiddo the whole day long. Sunset, the kid came to him. You did they all day. You did it. I knew you could. And Dad said, yes, I'm imagining a mouse in your pocket. You're what now? I'm imagining a mouse in your pocket. And that means there's 2 of you, which makes you a they. And I can remember to say they. And I know there is no mouse, and I won't need the mouse forever, or probably not that long. But is it okay if I imagine the mouse until I get the habit built of saying they? Kid thought about it. That's actually pretty clever. Okay, yeah, that works. And it's actually become something that we recommend in a lot of the PFLAG support groups. We've even had some young people will pop like a little, not a catnip mouse, but they have the non-catnip ones, little mousy toy for the cats to pop it in your pocket, peeking out as a visual reminder. It works really well. The
Julie,
Miss Jen, go ahead.
Another question. What do you think the future holds for terms like aunt, uncle, grandma, etc.?
I think they'll all still be here, but I think others will be added. For instance, if you have a nephew and a niece, and the 3rd child of your sibling has come out as non-binary, that's your nibbling, N-I-B-L-I-N-G, which I think is rather cute. So there'll be newer terms added. And language is always moving, right? Like cisgender, that was created pretty recently to refer basically to people who are not transgender. And some people say, oh, I think that's a slur. No, it's just a word that means people who aren't trans. It's a Latin root put together in the same way as transgender is, cisgender, same as. Some people say, well, that's just a made up word. Yes, just like every other word. They're all made up and the language is always changing. That's a really interesting question. The misgender corrector, this was two friends. One came out as trans, changed pronouns. Okay. Friend B was very supportive, but just kept flubbing it and felt really bad. Friend A said, it's okay. You're trying. Friend B said, no, I really should be doing better. I love you. Showed up on the doorstep with the Mr. labeled misgender corrector, handed it to friend A and said, squirt me if I get your pronouns wrong. It worked on the cat. And it worked. And I love that they had this friendship that they could go forward like this together and have this playful way to learn the new habit. For those who are perhaps more reluctant, the air horn may be a tactic. This was the sibling of a trans individual. They were going home to the family, the family estate, as it were, for Thanksgiving. And the trans sibling was not looking forward to being misgendered through the whole meal for another year. And so the other sibling came with an air horn. And every time somebody misgendered their sibling, they hit the air horn. And that solved it in 20 minutes. You could also use bells or a kazoo or a vuvuzela to have some fun. It's that bell of mindfulness, just like the mouse or the mist. It's that moment that says, oh, remember, new pronouns now, the correct pronouns now. Allies are all around us. We're all allies to each other, right? You are all wonderful allies for being here and being part of our conversation tonight. There are young allies, elder allies. There's this great recent booklet from PFLAG supporting your LGBTQ plus grandchild that I give out a lot and will help you connect to support groups. We have a lot of grandparents asking about this. There's a lot of non-binary kiddos out there. Cindy Lauper is how you do allyship really well. She's been working for years with the 40 to None campaign, which is now the True Colors United group to end youth homelessness. There's all sorts of allies from all walks of life. And as a case in point of being allies to each other, Sir Anne McKellen, who's cisgender and straight, is a dear friend and ally. Sir Patrick Stewart, who's cisgender and straight, is a dear friend and ally to Sir Anne McKellen, who is a gay icon and the first gay knight of the realm of the British Empire. Ian is in his turn, both of them are allies to the trans community, right? So it's a big, beautiful web that we are all building all around the globe. We all support each other in so many ways throughout the day. There's moments of allyship, coming alongside, standing with, being respectful and welcoming and affirming. If someone you loved came out recently, there are PFLAG groups meeting virtually and in person all across the state, or those of you from other states. They're in most of the US states. And if you don't have one near you, you can certainly connect with a virtual group. Mine is the Concord, Massachusetts group. We do meet virtually and we're good, particularly for late bloomers. We have several in our circles. And that's for someone who's coming out as an older adult or questioning. You might have heard that word. Sometimes the Q in the lineup is questioning, thinking, oh, wait, this feels a little different. Maybe that's not what I thought. Maybe I'm not cis or I'm not straight. What is this feeling? And maybe you are. You're just questioning. Questioning doesn't mean you're necessarily going to land under the queer umbrella. You might, or you might visit, make some friends, and then say, no, actually, I was right the first time, but I've learned something. It's okay. There's space to question. Absolutely. If you have grandparents supporting Rainbow Youth, Grand Acceptance also meets online. That's the new group. I'm really excited about this. They started one with some wonderful grandparents of PFLAG youth to help other grandparents better understand, support, and affirm their loved ones. If you are not out, you are loved, you are valid, you are enough. We're here and we're listening. Reach out anytime. If you need someone to talk to, you're welcome to call me on my direct line or email me anytime. I'll do my best to help find you info, support, and resources related to the Rainbow community, any ages. The hotlines there all went 24/7 when we went into lockdown because so many people were sheltering in place with family that didn't know, didn't understand, maybe didn't approve, and they needed to have those hotlines open. So they're all open in English and Spanish. And that elders hotline, they can do over 100 languages. They're based in New York. The Rainbow community has always been here, all around the world, in every nation, under the sun, everywhere it falls. It's been a long journey with wonderful allies like yourselves beside us. Onward we go, and we're just making a beautiful world together. Thank you so much for being part of our conversation tonight. I am more than happy to stay and take questions. Thank you for the great questions you've already asked.